Hi everyone. Clearly I decided to do a video for my discussion post, and so my post is going to be over Farmer's imitation, teaching writing through imitation. And I had a lot of fun reading through this piece because it reminded me of like when I was in composition 2, like not it specifically, but I did find myself reminiscing a few times through reading it. And so that's sort of what I'm going to focus on here, specifically in like Farmer's attention to parody. So I remember one day when my professor was reviewing a paper, she told me to think of who my audience is. Couldn't be her, because this was a science-based composition course, and my paper was grounded in psychiatry, and she was in no way a psychiatrist. And so this left me very confused at the time, right? Like, she was the only person who was going to read it. How wasn't she my audience? So, you want me to write it like for psychiatrists? Yeah, think of how the journals you've read wrote about this. Try to imitate that language, that style. Alright, so this isn't verbatim what we said. I'm just sort of drawing upon Farmer's language, but this was like 10 years ago, so it's like completely lost on me. But the point is that this blew my mind at the time. And I knew I could write like that because the way of writing always cracked me up. I found it funny, even with more serious matters or very dry writing. Something about it just made me laugh. There was just something so arrogant about it. Even with things I read in master's courses, I find myself chuckling at just how it's written. Right, like the language choices, the omission of certain information, and I remember thinking, who do they think they are? Now, I see they're members of a particular discourse, and they write in particular languages for those discourses. But back then, it all seemed like a performance that I could easily do. But it wasn't to fit the genre or build my professional ethos. It was to poke fun at how these professionals write. And so that mindset only got worse when I changed my major to philosophy. And I burst out laughing quite a few times in class at the way these writers, these philosophers, articulated their ideas in ways no one would ever or should ever do in real life. You know, like lofty phrases, long sentences, syllogisms, enthymemes, and it all just read so hilarious to me. Especially the rebuttals, which were done in such a flat, innocuous way. It always made me think of some Monty Python sketch or something, which is probably why I was so drawn to those. Alright, back on it. The reason I bring this up is because one piece of writing I created in my undergrad, which I used for my writing sample to get in the MARC program, has a rebuttal of an author I read in a philosophy of death class. So to summarize, the guy tried to disprove the Epicurean view of death, which you can't fear death, by discussing the time loaf theory. And so having taken a few classes and read a bit on theoretical physics, he seemed to have missed something there. So here's an excerpt from my paper. So most of this is just me re-explaining what he said, Silverstein said. I think doing a better job at it. Yada yada yada. Sean, temporal period has ended, but you're thinking that too. Down here, I started showing the gaps in his thinking and how the way he's talking about actually wouldn't work like that. And he's basically just proving himself wrong. He wanted to prove that death can be feared, but it just ends up being the dying that can be feared. Blah blah blah. So here, yeah. So let me read this. Then I'll read what I had in an earlier draft until I remembered who my audience was. Writers like this guy. Hence, in any case, it does not seem appropriate or rational to say that one's death is bad for them, even less so that one's death should be feared. It now seems that Silverstein missed his mark, yada yada yada. So what was it before I fluffed and yuppied it up? Clearly he is a coward, trying to justify his own fear to mean old Epicurus for wanting him to not be afraid. So this obviously doesn't have the same oomph, like it has an oomph, maybe, but just not like a scholarly oomph, which is, you know, what I was going for. But, so, I want to bring up a quote from Farmer here. Parody, then, is not so much linguistic play, but social commentary, an evaluation and critique of someone else's use of language in a prior situation. Parody is thoroughly contingent on a developed sense of audience awareness. And so I wanted to bring that up just because really it's that audience awareness that helped me sort of see how I could imitate this, how I could parody the language these people wrote in. And I think this example this excerpt does the best job, like I think. It's a little extreme, but I've learned to tone it down. But the thing is, I don't naturally write like that, and it requires me to get in that headspace. But to me, anytime I write, I'm parroting whoever I've read, like whether recently or just culmination over time, and I'm doing that for whoever would read me. And so even with this format, I'm taking some clues from what my favorite YouTubers do, or at least trying, and imitating or emulating might be a less offensive term than parody, but parody just makes it sound a lot more fun. And thinking that way really helped me to learn to write. And so I think it wouldn't hurt to get like others, especially, more novice writers, to do the same, to just try to parody what they read, especially when, in like composition classes or even throughout college. So that's my discussion post. That's my video. Trailed off a little bit there, but thanks for watching. See you guys in class.